Greetings ladies and gentlemen, time for another review. Today we'll be looking at the Hifiman HE-1000, and first let's take a look at the packaging. This comes wrapped in 2 layers of cardboard box with some hard foam in between, and on the inside you originally find a layer of foam with the user manual, and then the headphones sitting here and cables can be stuffed in here. However, cables don't really fit in there. As you can see, there's just a bulging out, and because this is as tightly made as it is, you can see it's probably laser cut here, the headphone can only just be crammed in there, so if it's in there it's very secure and good for long-term storage, but for day-to-day use I wouldn't use this. It gets quite annoying to take it in and out. Peripheral wise, the cable is a cloth covered cable, pretty standard, with an actual real Nutric connector, not the fake ones like Odyssey, and some generic 3.5mm connectors at the other end. And as you can see, it's quite stiff and janky, so it's a good cable, it's a decent quality, but it gets a bit annoying at times. The headphone itself is sort of a similar story in that the construction in general, sound choice of materials, is primarily steel. However, for example, this headband is not real leather as far as I can tell, and for comfort, for the original owner of this headphone, I've added a strip of real leather in here, which is sort of helping that. The strip itself is stuck in here with these 2 blocks, which, as you can see here, this is actually doing it right now. The screws come loose and then it falls apart and the thing pops out, and then it's impossible to get it in there again. The owner of this ended up using super glue to attach it in there again for it to stay there. So, not great. The band itself is a spring steel headband, quite solid. All the pieces here are, I suspect, it's probably milled aluminium, possibly steel, I don't know. These bits are stamped, and so I assume this is like 1mm thick, but it's been stamped out, so it's actually sharp on the edges on the inside here, but relatively rounded off out here. Then you have a thin wood veneer around here, but it's enough and not heavily lacquered, so it actually feels like wood. It works, it does the job. Down here you have the regular connectors, which are sort of a bit cross-eyed, as you can see in their placement. I don't know why that is, assumed to fit below the driver, and they sort of had to retrofit it for the hole there. Not sure what's going on there, but they are not good quality. They actually, one of them doesn't work properly, so some connectors don't fit in there, but the original cable does, and some others it's a bit fiddly. The pads are, as far as I can tell, it's either leather or a very good quality protein leather, and then velour on the actual contact surface, and leather on the inside as well, and then there's a cloth between your ear and the actual driver. So, build quality, good materials, really poor quality control, essentially it seems. I hope the quality control on the drivers are better, but yeah, they work, so I assume it is. In terms of sound, starting at the bottom, the low end is quite good. It's sort of, the headphone in general has a sort of warm, full sound, and the low end sort of has that as well. It's not in any way an overbearing low end, but it's there when you need it and in the amounts that are appropriate. It's not a very particularly hard-hitting headphones. It's relatively soft sound they have to them, but not as soft as, say, for example, an Oppo can have. But it's not as snappy as you find in a Sennheiser HE-1000. It doesn't quite have that sort of very crisp, transient response when you actually hear a drum hit, whereas with the Sennheiser you hear a very crisp, sort of sharp wham. You actually hear the snap of the sounds of a string on a guitar and that sort of thing. These sort of round them off a bit. Not much, but just enough that they sort of get a bit more laid back in the sound. That translates to the mid-range as well. The mid-range is very full, warm, very good in that sense. Does vocals and natural instruments very well. Preserves that sort of fullness and warmth to them, sort of a very, I suppose some would call it an analog sound to some extent. The treble is much the same story, where it's very clear, very crisp, but still laid back, but not rolled off so heavily as for you to notice, just sufficiently, I suppose, neutral, natural sounding that it never gets sharp or harsh or uncomfortable. Detail retrieval on them is good. I wouldn't say it's better than the HE-1000, but you could argue whether or not there's actually more to come to go after at that point. But considering they cost twice of the HE-1000, I'd sort of expect more, but it's acceptable. It's about on the level of it. It's just not as apparent, like I said, because of the transient response. The soundstage is very big. It has sort of an almost ethereal outside of your head feel. I'd actually say if you're looking for a headphone that's closer to speaker sound, these are a decent bet, short of going for a MySphere or AKG K-1000, because these sort of have a sound that's sort of detached. To explain that, an HE-800 is known for a reasonably big and very precise soundstage, but it's still sort of contained here around your head. You still sound like you're sitting in front of the band. It's relatively close to you. It's just not inside your head like with some poorer headphones. With these, it's sort of, instead of being here in the cup, it actually sounds like the sound is sort of radiating out here, like 10 centimeters away from your head, which gives you sort of a distance and a relaxed feel to the sound, because it's sort of hovering outside of your actual normal sphere of where sound would come from with headphones. However, the downside to that is that it doesn't actually come further in than that either. It sort of stays out there, which means if you want, for example, rock music to sort of get very in your face and aggressive, it'll never do that. Not with these. It stays out there. You need something like a dynamic headphone to actually get that grit. These are much too, I hesitate to call it civilized, but sort of passive and laid back in that regard. But not so much as for it to become boring, if you ask me, but I have heard some people sort of find them a bit sort of too boring compared to the others. And the actual precision of the soundstage is actually decent, but it's not as precise, it's not as pinpoint accurate as the HE-800 is, but it's decent. As far as driving these, you need a decent amount of power. These are really not ideal for running around with. They stay on your head pretty well in that regard, by the way. You can pretty much look up and down about them sort of sliding off your head because of the big surface area, which also makes them incredibly comfortable. But you look like a bit of a dork because you have this big arc and massive cups. But as far as driving, plugging them into something like my AK240 or a small Oppo DAC amp portable combo, you can listen to it, but you lose, the soundstage sort of collapses a bit and the bass becomes a bit too wobbly. Whereas if you actually plug them into an actual powerful amplifier, either desktop amplifier like my Quest style CMA800R, or even a powerful portable amplifier like the Elo Audio Mark III, balanced one, then you actually get that control of the driver, and the soundstage goes back to that ethereal feel. It's somewhat reminiscent of how I remember, for example, the Stax L700, which is sort of just there, and the music is just, there. There's just nothing. There's nothing wrong with it. In that, if you know what I mean, there's no particular fault with this headphone, but like I said, it can get a bit too laid back for some things. But on the upside of that, I'd say these are very ideal if you're looking for something that is very high end, has all the detail, but doesn't shove it in your face, so you're actually able to relax whilst listening. That goes, obviously, if you're listening to smooth jazz and that sort of genres that are already sort of big and relaxed. But even if you want to listen to stuff like metal, you can actually use these if you're just sort of tired. You kind of want to listen to it, but you need to relax as well. These actually let you keep all the music sort of at arm's length and actually keep it out in a place where they don't sort of assault your senses, but they're still there and crisp and clear. So I think much respect to them in that sense. So I'd actually recommend these headphones. They're a decent attempt, a shot at actually making something that's worth $3,000, and much better when you actually get them on the sale prices you can find these days, around $2,700, $2,500, or even used for that matter. Decent shot. One thing is though, they really need some quality control in these. I hope they've done it better on the newer models, but this is the Mark 1. I've tried the Mark 2. It's slightly improved over this, but a bit less relaxed and slightly thinner cups, but the actual build quality seems to be exactly the same in general. So that's the main issue with these, honestly. But sound-wise, these are actually very good if you need a relaxed headphone. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll be making more videos soon. I might get into some speaker reviews as well. We'll see probably retro reviews from the speakers I have. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comment section and I'll be sure to respond. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.